Hi, this is Yazdabu live from SCAI 2019. I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Charanjit Rihal, who just gave the Founders Lecture. Dr. Rihal, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And congratulations on giving the Founders Lecture. Tell us a little bit more about basically your lecture from today in the morning. What are some of the key takeaways?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank SCAI for the opportunity. It really was a highlight and a privilege to give the Founders Lecture this morning. So I decided, rather than speaking about what we do, which is in interventional cardiology, to talk about why we do it. In other words, talk about clinical decision making.
Yep.
I've had a interest in history and the history of medicine for many years. And what I decided to do is to talk about clinical decision making, specifically the pitfalls, and illustrate it using cases from history. So for example, we talked about why databases, no matter how large, don't really substitute for randomized clinical trials. And I talked about how we as a medical community talk ourselves into believing certain things and then acting on them, even when scientific evidence can point us the other way. So it was a presentation that was designed to make people think critically about what we're currently doing and why we're doing it and how we may learn from these lessons and hopefully not repeat the same lessons of history.
Like what? Well, what is something that science has taught us to do something and then we did the other?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example, again, a historical example. In the 19th century, Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that washing hands before delivering babies reduced the incidence of something called puerperal fever dramatically and saved mothers' lives. But this did not jive with the current prevailing medical belief system. No one believed him. He eventually sort of, had psychological issues, was committed to a mental institution, ended up getting beaten to death.
Oh, wow.
So here's an example where he had wonderful data. It was published in the Lancet in 1848, clearly showing that it's better just to wash your hands with chlorine. No one believed it, and no one adopted it for some decades afterwards. So that was an example from a century ago. And so my challenge to everyone is to think about what we're currently doing, because we believe it and we've always been taught that way, even though it may not be the right thing.
What do you think is going to be next for SCAI, and basically in terms of the next step for SCAI and basically for this conference?
Yeah. Well, so firstly, I want to again thank the SCAI leadership for inviting me here. I think it's a wonderful conference, and I would like to see that this small, intimate conference continue, with this size, to present cutting-edge research and really to be leaders in our field. Because I think that we as a medical community need to take charge of our profession in many aspects. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One, there's a lot of things being done to physicians and to the profession of medicine by the insurance industry, by the EHR industry. In my opinion, we as a profession need to take control of our own profession and our destiny again. And I think SCAI is well positioned to be one of the leading societies in that role. So I'd like to see it be more activist and more kind of as leading the profession, not just presenting data.
Well, Dr. Rihal, thank you so much for joining
pleasure.
us, and thank you all for joining live from SCAI 2019.